Right, this is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter. Obviously, we have a multiple time return guest. It is Moses. It's actually the guy I used to do counterpoints with, which one, just for now, we don't talk about counterpoints, you know, maybe it comes back one day. And then two, just nice to see you again after all the years, Moses.
Yeah, it's good. Well, you know what? We'll always have our run didn't end with scandal and controversy. So that's all we, sometimes that's all you can really hope for.
You know, we just did like the normal thing. We just drifted apart, you know, there wasn't, you know, we don't have to Men in Black hour period. It was all right. Still on the internet. It's all good.
Went off to coach and never came back. But yeah, those are the good old days, we call them.
Although I will say, Moses, I did see on Reddit recently that everyone agreed with that thing that all casters should be banned from standing behind the players, because they pointed out, Moses, that you and Yanko got all those advantages in coaching from standing behind. I still don't even know what that is, bro. Like, what advantage?
It's such an insane angle to take. It's like, what am I going to grab that in this particular match they called this strategy? Like, what do you want from me?
Bro, imagine that as well, like in the huddle, like Twists, listen, just trust me, bro. When they played against Big online in the online era on Mirage, they do this, like, oh shit, he's got the secret sauce. Like, what are you talking about?
It was a weird one. But you know what? Whatever. That whole thing, if that's going to bother players, I'm on that side of that controversy where I'm just like, I don't care. I don't need to be behind the teams anyways.
Sure. Right, okay. What is going to be your good point to start the show with, Moses?
Oh yeah, the guest kicks things off. Ooh, that's spicy. My good point is I fucking loved this most recent offseason. I think all the top teams made really good changes. I think the top 10 teams especially, I think either did a good job with the situation they were in or just or did a good job in the situation they wanted to create for themselves. So like Spirit with no change, which I think is obviously good. They just won the major, but also I think the big thing there is resisting the appeal of maybe putting in Kaisuke a little bit early. But obviously keeping him on the Spirit Academy is huge. Vitality plus Rops, they already won Katowice. We know that one's going to be a banger. Navi, no change. They were the best team last year. That makes sense. Still looking good. Eternal Fire plus Joda. They've had a hot start to the year. I think it's an upgrade at a position they needed an upgrade. G2 took Heavy God, who's looking like he's going to turn into a really, really strong anchor in the pro scene as he gets settled in. It also frees mobs up for positions. I think G2 did about as good as they could after losing a player like Nico. FaZe plus Elige, a lot of aggression, a lot of playmaking, a really versatile piece for Kerrigan to use. Mongols, no change, makes sense. Virtus Pro plus Flamus, Icy, Electronic now taking over the reins of in-game leader. They've already seen the turnaround where it looks like they're on a positive path. That's a great change. Maus, the Sphinx, minus Shuhei, jury's not out, but
that could be the exception that proves the rule. You know, it's all good. You got one.
Also, I think qualifying for the Cluj playoffs like today, is like, just as of a couple hours ago, is like cool. Right out of the gate, there's at least something positive. I think the fun thing about that one is it's kind of like when you hear all the conversation of players these days being like, it feels like in CS2, a lot of like the top level CS:GO pros are like, all you have to do in this fucking game is swing, which is funny because that was what everyone said about CS:GO after the change from 1.6 in source at the start of it. But I think this is like the epitome of like putting that philosophy into let's get more firepower and just an in-game leader who's just a really basic going to be able to call some tactics and trust the firepower. So I think Maus is a cool experiment to test that theory. And then Astralis, I guess it kind of ends there. But that top nine's done great.
Okay.
I mean, on beyond that, I mean, we could keep going.
You could. Liquid.
Yeah. Liquid's been doing some pretty good work. I've got a team in my good category that made a change that I'm actually liking them as well. But all in all, I guess the angle for this is that you could be positive because most of the teams made pretty good moves, actually. Most of them did some pretty good work overall. But it's kind of like because they were forced in a lot of these situations, I would say. That's the thing. Like, they did the best of what they could given the sometimes awkward situations. Sometimes they were, obviously, like, G2 probably didn't actually just want Heavy God for Nico, but given that, well, actually, you know what? Given what the CEO said, actually, they could have just kept Nico. So maybe they did fuck up. So
here's the problem.
On them, perhaps.
You know what? Obviously, he's welcome to say whatever he wants, but based on the info I have, that is actually completely wrong. But you'll have to find out about that one day. You have to find out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think probably the fuck up in that regard took place probably 6 months prior. I think when you have an entire year of Nico knowing that he's going to be trying to leave or going to leave, and you don't do anything to try and keep him if that's your desire, it's just crazy. Like, it's an insane thing. So for the offseason, I think they did good, maybe not great managing that situation overall. But I think one of the reason why I like all these changes is from a meta perspective. I think it shows there's a good indication, and no GM is going to have a spotless track record. There's always going to be mistakes there. But I think it shows that the leadership in terms of coaches and GMs, we have a lot of these top teams are making some intelligent moves in the sense of these roster changes, that it's not just being squandered. There was no move this season that was like, what the fuck are these guys thinking? Like, why are they getting this player? He's past his prime. He's not good, whatever it might be. And none of them, it really felt like this offseason was just all bangers. And I think when you're going into an era of the VRS system where if you want to make sweeping changes, you have to buy a core. You have to make 3 roster changes, essentially. I think showing that the top teams are able to build continuity in the rosters they already have is super important, is super positive sign for the scene.
Yeah, I've got to say, go on, Maui.
I would just say really quickly that like in the last offseason that we had in the middle of 2024, for example, this roster mania was a lot more exciting. That's what I would 100% give it, because you look at the top teams in the first half of last year, and Maus didn't change anything at that offseason. FaZe didn't, Vitality didn't, Navi didn't. G2, yeah, they made a big swap with Nexa and Hooksy and then getting Snacks and Mobs. Like, that was kind of cool. But even like Spirit didn't do anything again. I don't think Complexity made a move at that time. But this roster mania has led to some really fun storylines for this season, for sure.
Yeah, I'll even say as well, I actually think looking back, like in the off-season you're talking about, after basically we had the Blast Spring Finals, that was even a period where some of the teams, like the obvious ones, Liquid, probably should have pulled the trigger more than they did. Like, if you don't know, by the way, it's true that actually Leash could have gone back to Liquid at that point in time. They just don't want him because, well, I think you can guess at this point who doesn't want him. That's okay. That's fine. You don't have to have him. I'm just saying you look a bit stupid if instead you have the results you have where you don't ever make the bloody playoffs. So I would just say, I actually think the overall point, you ran through it pretty comprehensively there, but it is good because essentially, even if you take the one where the obvious one that people would actually point out on paper is not that good is the G2 lineup. But as you say, they didn't, no matter what the G2 CEO said, I will say that I don't think he had a choice. So if Nico's leaving, there actually isn't a player that you can actually replace him with, not least because Donk's not joining your team. So at that point, you have to downgrade anyway. So if instead you just say, right, forget the Nico angle, because remember, they did have Malbs to put in his positions. What are the good players in the scene? And by the way, if you look at G2 historically, they actually don't spend mega money and get the big names. They actually tend to try and like find like just pieces that work in the lineup. So that was actually about a kind of a sleeper pickup. I think most people think Heavy God's pretty good. And I'm with you, by the way. The two teams where it's just obvious, no matter what you think, you couldn't make a move, was Spirit. Because here's the thing, bro, the guy I'm replacing on Spirit is Magix. I can't do that after a life game in the final of the major.
I know.
Like, you know what I mean? Bro, essentially he won me the majors. I have to go, you know what, mate? You at least get one more season, for fuck's sake. Even if you're not going to do it again, you do get a season if you win me a major. I think that's a pretty cool deal. And then for Na'Vi, yeah, sure, Na'Vi dropped off and they haven't won yet. But bro, after what they proved to us with those players last year, you've got to again give them more than like 2 lands. You can't be like, right, you know what? Sorry, Amber and Wonderful, get the fuck out the door. You're like, well, I was in every final. It's like, yeah, but you're out. Get out now. So I agree with you. It's actually a rare time where the Mouse one, we just don't even know why that was yet, so we can't even really judge that one. All the rest, you're right, almost every single one is good. In fact, you even go down, even in the context of like all the like roster swapping among the other, bro, almost every team, I've almost never seen an off-season like this. As you said, Liquid in theory did an upgrade. By the way, Falcons did an upgrade, bro, NIP did an upgrade, Heroic did fucking hell. Bear in mind,
Gamer Legion.
All of them. It's actually wild. Yeah. You're right. It's one of the only times I've ever seen where almost nobody, like I've seen off-seasons where half of them are like, it's not even that it's going to be bad, but yeah, you just don't know the player, or he wasn't, he wasn't in the role they're going to put him in. So yeah, it's one of the only times ever where it looks like everyone generally did a good job. So rare time where I'll say well done to the GMs of CS. We obviously bang on all the other times, so well done. You did a good job.
But we got a positive one out of you, so that's all. They'll take that to their grave forever.
Yeah. And by the way, even like, if I cross the scene, because I'll give you an example, even another roster down, like even Complexity, well, what choice did they have? Theirs was the equivalent of Nico leaving. Like, there's no choices. There's no one from any we can put in there, is there? There's not anyone.
We'll get there later.
All good.
I think too, like, I think it's kind of fun too, because I think you brought up a good point about G2, where it's like, I wonder how G2 management views the situation they're in now, because it feels like they're in like a fucking Groundhog's Day loop, where now you have the same thing with Nico that you do with MonteCristo. Yep. So it's like, this was a great move. It's not a good enough move to get you contending for trophies, but it's a good enough move to like have you have a decent season, see where things are going to go. But now you have the pressure of, we have to try and keep MonteCristo here. And we've already sent away Nico, who we loved playing with. So we've got to figure out a way to make G2 in this lineup as attractive as possible to not lose Modesty. So they basically get a redo of the whole Nico situation. And I'm curious how that's going to turn out.
Yes, and I will say as well, the reason why I find the CS division of G2 so fascinating is, one, obviously Oslo has no input whatsoever. So like, spoiler, I don't get to have any input because I used to just basically do like I would with Jason Lake or something, send him, oh, what do you think about this player? I can't do that, so I have no input in it anyway. And then secondly, they have the opposite problem in League of Legends, which is in League of Legends, they're the one spot every European player wants to go, and they have loads of money. So it's actually in that game, they're almost on easy mode, whereas the problem in this game is, I mean, here's the biggest thing. We'll get to this later because it's a good point. So one day I'll do this as another bad point. I'll just put this out there. Bro, why don't all the top players want to join if you've got Monosy? Like, what am I missing? That's the thing, that there's a mystery in G2 and CS that's never been revealed of like why big name people don't join the team or don't seem to want to. And even worse, why the big name people leave. But anyway, that's by the by. Right, Mauisnake. We all know that classic Maui, like essentially, Maui when he does Snake and Banter and it's during an event, he's just doing 3 different versions of, here's what grinds my gears, here's what greases my gears, and here's what could grind or grease my gears today. That's what I was thinking about. But then he presents it as like, oh, here's something in the scene that we should really talk about. So what today are you, what's greasing your gears right now, Maui?
I mean, this might not be the most prime example of it. I'm not going to just say PGL are running the best tournament of all time right here. I mean, it's a little less self-indulgent. Okay. But it is one that I've been hyped on for a while, and I'm glad that it's just bearing fruit. Is Pain. It's Pain Gaming. It's Pain Gaming, and it's actually NQZ in particular, because NQZ for me last season with Pain, or last year, was pretty streaky. I felt like he was actually very good versus Brazilian teams always. Every time I looked at his numbers, it was just, he's just smurfing against anyone that's basically in Brazil, especially online. And then he would come to these international events, and it would basically be the Big Uzera, the Snow Story. Yep. Even people like Lux and Kawaz would sometimes overshadow him. Now, at this event, he's actually proven that he has, I mean, there's quite a bit of consistency here. He put up great numbers versus VP, the Mongols, Falcons. I mean, he looked actually just like a very well-rounded player. Sometimes, I guess, in the past, I would say that just kind of threw his life away a little bit more needlessly, would sometimes, I guess, even just the frequency of hit shots. Sometimes it's that simple, actually, with an opper. Just the utility would perturb him too much. You know, he just get forced off of angles too easily. But it felt like he was just more well-adjusted to Tier 1 CS. And I wouldn't have found a suitable replacement for him, so I didn't really necessarily think, man, your time on Pain, it's running out or anything like that, and we need to see more. It was just that, well, there's not really any better options, so Pain are sort of forced to keep you right now. And yeah, I think it's actually kind of paid off. I mean, but on top of it, the most satisfying or self-serving thing is, man, I've been on David Deus for a while, ever since he was on Red Canids, and I was looking at some of his work on there, and that guy also has just been like really, really sick for them. Like his opening ability is, I give him this jokey nickname. It was tongue in cheek, but now it's like the only nickname I think he has. So I've just called David Deus the Chilean Elige for quite some time now, and he just continues to do it. He's just a really, really great opener. Kind of the X factor in a lot of these games, because if he can pop off versus a team, it almost feels like Pain's success is most correlated to David Deus's ability. But now he has a stable force in NQZ who's leveled up his game, and that's even with Big Uzera sort of falling off as an individual, because he's given some of his positions to David Deus, and they've rightly done so. They've rightly identified that this is a move in terms of position swaps that's made sense, and now it's just made Pain a team that, for the first time in Big Uzera's career, he's made it to a big event arena playoff. So honestly, I'm just happy that this is working out, because I'll even say my ulterior motive for all of this is that I just want the teams that didn't show up to get punished. So I want Liquid and Furia to fall behind Pain in the rankings if Pain actually passes them, and they have. Pain's actually now the #1 America's team, actually, on the VRS.
Okay. Yeah, eat your heart out. Eat your heart out. So wait, is your good NQZ specifically, or Pain as a team? Just out of curiosity.
I guess it's all just points on it, so you can take anything about Pain, really. Yeah.
No, I'm with you. I don't want to go too big on this because I actually have some things about Brazilian teams in my bad section that we can dive into. But I'm with you, especially because I think Big Uzera has been one of the most exciting Brazilian players for some time. So seeing it's crazy to me to think that this is his first big event playoffs in an arena. Although I guess not that crazy. It's just I feel like he's been playing good ever since I like noticed his breakout was like right before the Paris major qualifier, essentially. Like at the end of CS:GO is when I started like catching wind of how good he was playing. So that's cool to see. And just, I mean, another region that has enough players to build up teams that can be knocking on the doors of playoffs is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, on a past episode, I actually did pick Pain as one of my good points because I think, like, my problem with their team was I was setting that narrative of, like, I just want Big Azera to go to one of the other teams. Like, all the other teams need the IGL, but then, being as he's going to stay, if you don't know, he's essentially on some, like, tabs and shit where he's just decided he's never leaving and he likes it there. And he just I guess he's one of those people who wants to build his own system. Well, the difference is now, all of a sudden, they actually have some firepower around him. Like, and they clearly are, by the way, like, a quality team. Like, look, they're not going to blow the doors off, but man alive, just look at, if you don't know, guys, they had the hardest run of all the teams in the Swiss system here, and they didn't even go to the 2-2 game. They played against fucking Mongols, Falcons, VP, and Astralis, and the one loss was Mongols. And by the way, they could have won that one. That could have been a 2-0. Like, that's actually fucking fire. Well, 2-1 or whatever. That's actually fire. And so then you add in the NQZ guy, right? He's playing there against a load of people you know. Like, he's playing against Dexter, 9-10, Icy, and Device. Like, he's not playing bombs. He actually had other people at this tournament might have taken benefit of the field, you know, not that great. This is pretty good. And by the way, even if you go to the Astralis series, the one series he didn't frag out in, I can tell you all the ones that he lost, if you look at the performance, is just their 3-star names, just Stown, Yabby, and Device. Like, bro, this guy's tracking really nicely. And with you, Maui, the problem with the Brazilian scene always is because they always went through that America's RMR, you always have to check when you see the stats, like, oh, wait, did this guy just play like Sharks, Fluxo, and like 6 other Brazilian teams I don't know, and is that how we pump the stats up? That's usually what the case before, but he's actually doing it against real teams now, mate. And this wasn't someone that was on anyone's radar. Remember, the obvious joke back in the day, listen, Fallen, mate, you better get it in gear now, mate, because Big Azera's coming for that IGL spot. Now NQZ's coming for the AWP spot. Homie, you had that thing on lockdown before because you had like, I'm the only IGL and AWP. It's like, well, dual function in it. So you got it. You better watch out now, mate. They're coming. They're coming.
The fun thing I think you guys have is, like, I mean, Maui mentioned you did the development of NQZ and Davideus, because this whole team seems like it's been built on essentially development and potential. Like, even Snow was like the highly sought after, like 14 or 15, there was like a bidding war over him just to get him within the organization for when he does get better. I still don't think we've seen him literally hit his stride at tier 1 competition, but if it does, and you factor that in with the development of NQZ and Davideus, it's like, yeah, this is a team that can cause damage. The only problem is always the inconsistency, because I think you see the pain that gives you that belief that they're starting to reach their potential. And then the next event is going to be like the pain where you're like, what happened now? Like, why can't we get back-to-back events? So that's been the eternal struggle, I think, for Pain, is finding the consistency of playing well.
And I'm with you, Matt. I actually do think the Davideus guy has like skills. It's just obvious if you watch him.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I like about him is I've watched a few of his demos, actually. It's not I definitely don't think he's just like one of those wide swing entry fraggers. He actually just assesses, can he get mid control on Ancient based off of the nades that are coming at him. If he can't, he's just going to back up. If he can, he's going to go through it. Like, it's not, it sometimes, like, I think the prime example would be Yakindar on Liquid. It's just like, dude was just running his head through a brick wall. Like, he was trying to, at least. He was failing at
like, I'm making this entry play no matter what happens.
Yeah. But Davideus is like, nope, they threw 2 mollies and a nade. Like, I'm going to hold on for a second. We'll retake mid if we need to, based off of what he hears. So I like that a lot better. And that's why I just feel like there's so much room for growth in terms of consistency. They're not just like praying that their mechanics are going to save them. That's kind of what I mean. Also, like, if I watch NQZ or Davideus, yeah, they can hit some shots from time to time, but I'm not blown away. Like, this isn't Donk and MonteCristo, okay? These are guys that are just good at assessing what they need to do next, have good rotations, and a system around them that isn't all or nothing in the first 10 seconds of a round.
Yeah. Right. My good point is going to be, actually, that I think Frozen, who already people were like mad about his HLTV placing last year, and they were like, oh, it's fraudulent or whatever. Bro, he actually looks better than ever. Like, he actually looks like, funny enough, I've heard this story before. Remember when fucking Rops left Mouse the first time, and then all of a sudden Frozen just like came into his own and became really top notch? Right, first of all, there is an obvious angle with those two players, just like JKS and Naff in Liquid, where it's not that you can't make them work together, but they're never going to be like optimized. You know what I mean? You're always, for some reason, we all do that thing where if the names are good enough, we do the copium, it'll work. Phelps and Fur, you had Electronic and Axel, you go, oh, I've got two similar players, but imagine if they could both work at the same time. And sadly, it just doesn't work that way. It just doesn't, unfortunately. So, first of all, he's got it primed right now. Like, listen, bro, it's your team. You're the fucking lurker. Go to work. Like, yeah, everyone's loving it. He's also, by the way, way better on T side for my money. Before, he was one of those guys where I could trust him on CT side to frag out. He's really good. He kind of chooses his own time. He's way better on T side now, mate. He's brought a new like element to his game. And then lastly, I'll even speculate one of the reasons I think why he's taken a step back when he was in phase before, which is, even though the first time when he was in Mouse, he actually was literally 16 years old. If you think about it, because it's still Carrigan and it's still Rops, bro, Rops is like his big brother in fucking CS at this point in time. You're not going to come and like take all his shit and demand that. Like, that's not Frozen's personality. He actually is a pretty chill guy. Like, you notice he is, I don't think I've ever even seen him trash talk, mate. He's kind of like just kind of a chill, happy-go-lucky guy. So to me, you almost like need to create the space for those players and tell them, like, go to work, like, you're supposed to be the star of this team, because he looks fucking really good, mate. He's the one person you can rely on almost every match now for FaZe. And the key thing is, everyone who thinks he was a fraud in that like past year. He was never a fraud, by the way. He just maybe wouldn't have been ranked as highly. And yeah, maybe I thought Elige was better, but he wasn't in any playoffs. So the difference is this year, if you look at the way FaZe is set up, you look at the way the world is set up, bro, he could just be a top 10 player this year, legit. Like, the guy just has skills.
Yeah, he's got a lot of game. I like Frozen a lot. I think the interesting thing about that FaZe team for me at the moment is the only reason I'd be like hesitant to get hyped up on this start to the year is because I wonder how many changes are going to come. I know it still feels like sometimes when I watch their games, like they've had this experiment going of where Kerrigan is like anchoring certain bomb sites on certain maps, and it's like, I don't think that's going to work out long term. He's going to get abused in those positions against the best teams in the world, and you're going to have a tough time beating them on your CT sides. So I think we're going to see some shifts in how they play certain maps, and whether it's kind of Frozen slotting into anchor positions. Rain's a possibility as well, but depending on where they go, I'm just interested to see with Elige now in the team how this FaZe project switches things around to get everyone back to a little bit more comfort. I'm with you. Frozen's playing really well, and I like his game, but what's the changeup going to be? Is that going to cause something to change if you get put into a situation where you have to change your philosophy and the way you approach the game?
I really just like he can now be the clean closer for them, as opposed to when it was Rops and him. I'm not going to say Rops and Frozen looked like when BlameF and Zipnix were on the same team. Like, that was just like who can bait who harder. But when it was Frozen and Rops, you could tell that Frozen sometimes probably wouldn't even be in the position that should be the next guy to take some kind of initiative, but he just would, and it felt like that's because Rops is never going to be the guy to do it. So it kind of forced him into some awkward situations. But now I think the pecking order, or the hierarchy of who's taking the next initiative is very clear cut. It's like Elige, or I guess like Elige, Kerrigan, and Rain are all kind of in like a trio of people that are going to make moves, and then the second line of people is Brokey and Frozen. And they're like, if I see Brokey and Frozen in a late round together, I think a lot of things can happen. You know, I feel like they can make it work. And also, if there's just any of the other three guys alive, they will almost always be the guy that goes before them. So Frozen can naturally trade. And I legit think like Frozen has got to be one of the, man, how do I do this without this isn't hot take point made, so I don't have to have a hyperbole here. Like, but I think he's got to be in the top like 7 trade fraggers in the world right now. Okay, I think that's pretty fair. Yeah. I think that's a fair number. Like, I don't think there's too many people whose trade fragging is as consistent as Frozen's has been this year. Like, when Elige and
he's
Frozen
got really consistent mechanics in general, right? So if he just hits his shots, doesn't he? Yeah.
He's super smooth. His aim is just super smooth. Yeah. His first bullet's really good, and his tracking is really good. Like, I never watched Frozen embarrass himself with a shot. Okay, like I'll even say like Stown used to be that guy. He used to be so consistent, but it's like this dude just misses shots now. Okay, like Frozen with a rifle in his hands, he's gonna get the kill if he needs to, and if he has like ample time to aim at the guy. So. I think he's been fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I will say, referencing what I said on Hot Take Point, man, I was saying that he's gonna be a top 5 rifler for the next 3 years. I think he's actually been pretty close ever since I said that. He's really up there in the elite rifler category.
So basically, we're not putting him in the stunner status. He's never going to embarrass himself with a shot. What's great is he'll even hear this somehow and get back to me, and there'll be the DM of like, whoa, bro, why'd you do me like that? And by the way, I'll even say, because I said this to Moses, when I saw that skit, which was really funny, when they did that gold room skit from The Shining, I did immediately message Moses and just go, it's amazing the method acting he was doing in that scene.
He actually appears drunk.
I know, I love it.
He's got that game. Yeah,
I love it.
Listen, skills.
He's like Daniel Day-Lewis or something. It's fucking great. Great stuff. Anyway, that's just a bit of inside baseball for everyone in the industry. It's all
10 a.m. call time.
Harmless jokes, just harmless banter, of course. Right? No. By the way, I totally agree. I also say this as well. I also think the thing with Frozen is, it's like you said, if you look at the roles, it's already on CT side, like Moses said, that they're having to still figure things out. And like, how do we hide like Carrigan if it's a bad man? Bro, on T side, the genius of bringing Elysian, who's just been like entry/playmaker for the last year and a half, is you just streamlined the whole team. Everyone knows their job now on T side. Like, it's just obvious. Now you just have to actually play the game.
I know go on, Maui.
Well, they just finally have an elite playmaker. Like before, it was Raynor Kerrigan just hoping that they were going to get that kill, and it was like, oh man, like I as much as I love the two guys, I mean, I just can't always rely on them versus top 5 teams in the world for them to actually get entries. But Elysian he just does it at such a higher clip.
Yeah, I said this on Talking Counter when we were talking about this move with Elige coming in. I was like, I think FaZe might be primed to have like one of the, like a really nice hot honeymoon period. Like if you look at like the history of Kerrigan as an IGL, there's always a massive tick up in performance after like a roster change of this caliber. And Elige coming in provides so much aggressive playmaking, which they were sorely missing. It provides so much impact, which they were missing, that I think those two combined, I'm really excited to see the start of this FaZe team. I know like Katowice kind of started out disappointing, not making the playoffs and everything like that, but a little bit more time. And I'm wondering if when they take off, if they don't just like, they just actually just stay going forward and stay getting better from event to event.
I'll even say as well, that's even why I think when the Frozen first came into FaZe, it was actually one of the only times ever where he didn't have like a crazy glow up, because, bro, they were already in every final at that point in time. They're actually the number one team. So the problem at that point is you don't rock the boat. Actually, I think Kerrigan's probably the best IGL ever. Like, if he brings you in a team, he's never ever done that old NIP shit of like, look, lol, you get all the bad spots. It's like, if I sign you, mate, it's because I think you're really good and we're going to fucking unleash you and put you in position. So, no, it's great for everyone, I think. It's banger. So I thought, Maui, there you go. There's a little fucking olive branch spin, as I've always told you, Rops is way better than Frozen, and you were overhyping him. It's all right. He's now acceptable. I now accept him as a good player. There you go. He's really good.
He's been so good for so while.
He's done enough for me. He gets the Thorin stamp of
And you notice, in a way, secretly, I even revealed sort of how I operate there. It's also because too many fans went the other direction. I'm like, well, I'll always be against the fans. So this is why you're all wrong. You know what? Now I do agree with Maui. He is really good. Shut up, you idiots. You don't know anything about this game. Okay. So, what is your bad point, though, Moses? You hinted at earlier.
Yeah, we're gonna go back to Brazil. We're gonna go back to Brazil because there's still the issue. My bad point is that we still have the issue within the Brazilian scene where you just can't make one good fucking team.
Yeah,
like we have still, like, I think last year was maybe 4 teams with Imperial kind of knocking on the door. They feel like they've sort of dropped off, but now it's 3 teams: MIBR, Pain, Furia, who are all squads knocking on the door to the playoffs, not able to get into them consistently and not able to have impact once you're there. So you have all these teams that feel like they're right on the cusp, and you have wonderful players in different positions on each one of these teams. And it's the eternal curse of ever since that legendary Brazil lineup started breaking up, is that Brazil could just not get all their top players on one team. That region cannot produce one squad. And I'm sure there's plenty of reasons for it. Obviously, the big and easy one to point out is the nature of how the organizations deal with each other in terms of buyout clauses, in terms of contracts, longer contracts, massive buyouts, really pain in the ass negotiations where it seems like they just try and screw each other more than they try and get what they want. And you're stuck in a scene that now just has this wealth of talent to an extent that we can never fully realize because everyone's spread out on different rosters.
I guess it's been about a couple months since we've talked about the Brazilian scene and how
I messaged Duncan with this one. I was like, tell me if you need me to get a new bad point, because I know this has like been an eternal conversation over like 2 years. I feel like 3 years.
The valid point you make though there is like, if anything, we're just getting more teams and we're still spreading it out even more, spreading it even thinner.
Yeah. The transfer fees in that space are just so absurd, and it still continues to hamstring the fact or the prospect that we're gonna just get an elite Brazilian lineup like what Furia probably should have been. Because, and I was actually thinking of making my bad point MIBR actually, because it's another team where it feels like, man, they made an upgrade, but they kind of lost a few things. I'm not going to get too deep into their faults right now, right here. But yeah, it feels like you have a couple really strong pieces that are across the board or like just across the scene, but you can't consolidate that talent. You could probably even make two elite Brazilian teams, but instead you just have, I mean, like what I pick at? I mean, Pain is obviously one, Furia, MIBR, Imperial's got some decent players too. I still feel like probably Dumao and Lado deserve a little bit better than what they're working with Legacy, for example. Like those guys have been on my radar for a long time, and yeah, I guess like you definitely could have a really strong two teams, but instead we've got a couple weak links. I mean, I like Pain. I made them my good point, but I still feel like, say, Cowes is maybe not the best anchor for that scene. You probably, if you could actually just pick up like Dumao, this team is just suddenly incredibly complete, for example. So yeah, that's just my take on him.
Okay. Yeah, I think yeah, it's just, I feel like there's so many options. I actually think there's a cool bonus option too now, because we have Saw apparently talking about how they can't solve their problems within Portugal. So
I hadn't thought that. I'm going, yeah.
Oh, now you're all of a sudden, and by the way, Story looks like he could be the best Portuguese-speaking opera that there is right now. Like Story has been playing very, very well to start this year. His tournament at Cluj has had some disgusting performances from him, where he's just single-handedly dominate. I know SHR's leaving that team. He was also a primary opera on his former team as well, and he looked solid. And then even if you wanted to go the route of saying, we really need an IGL, Mutiris, I don't know if he can blow the roof off the building, but I think he's done a solid job building this Saw roster up and having them be competitive from the end of CSGO to now, always competitive in the sense of better than the Portuguese teams have ever been and knocking on the door. So there's some flexibility there. And I think even for Saw, even if it's you guys looking at Brazilian players, that could be an interesting angle as well. It feels like there's some kind of a marriage there, but certainly there's got to be a good Portuguese speaking team somewhere within all these players.
Yeah, especially because for me, the craziest thing is, it's like I said earlier when I made the joke about Fallen. Before, what we used to say was, there's a million really good riflers. I mean, people know that. You've got Insane, you've got Keserato, Yuri, you can keep going down the list. Skulls is actually pretty good. Like, there's a whole bunch of people who have skills. And by the way, even the people whose stats aren't that good. That Lakowski guy, I can see why they tried signing him. He's had some moments I've seen where he had some fucking snappy aim and it looks good. There's even the people who they put in the bad roles. When Cello used to be in the old Imperial, he was way better than he is in this squad. They probably give him all the shit roles. But the other thing they never used to have, and this is why I actually think it's fine to do this topic again, Moses, is because I actually did this last year at some point towards the end. I did one of those ones where it was like, make your Brazilian super team. And the problem you have is this: you used to always get into trouble with the IGL and the AWP, because it was always like, fuck. On the AWP, I'm always like, am I really going to get like Henny back? You know what I mean? Like, even for the IGL one, okay, maybe I want Bigger Zero, but he hasn't really had the chance to do it in the playoffs. The point is, now these players are actually getting to the point where we just had a whole discussion about AWPers. Then you have the whole thing with Bigger Zero actually just does look good and better and better and better, event to event to event. All of a sudden, you could put it this way: if you actually had the Space Jam moment now, you could actually make a real team. If you could really like free all contracts and just make like basically, here's what you need, Moses. But this apparently is, I was told this by Starix, so I'll believe it's true. The coolest part about the story of Na'Vi being formed, where Ukraine used to have a bunch of good players, but they were also on like 4 teams, is the story he says is that the Arbalete guy, the millionaire, literally said to him, you have to make like sort of a super team, but you're not allowed to put your emotion into it or who likes who. You have to just really make like the 5 best Ukrainian players. Because literally, it was Space Jam. He said, your project, the idea is to show the world how good Ukraine can be. If someone did that, like some crazy billionaire guy with all the Brazilian, he could afford the buyouts. Yeah. Dude, I guarantee someone could make a straight fire roster out of Brazil. It'd be top 5 in the world at least, mate. Really good.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's crazy that we don't have a Brazilian team with the talent they have out of the region, not competing for trophies. Yeah. And not to mention, we'll keep extending the conversation, because obviously last year and the year before that, it was all, we're wasting Keserado's prime. Yep. And he's your biggest talent. And that's still kind of extending now with a contract renewal and everything, to where it's like, you're missing the boat with some of these players as well. Yes. Like, who knows? I think Yuri's dropped a step from where he was at his peak, and I don't know if he'll get back. It's looking like he's struggling to find that form again. If that happens to Keserato, it's like, oh fuck, like what have we done here? This guy could have been the next Cold Zero.
By the way, Moses, I know, because back in the day you always appreciated this. The most sort of I just thought the most off-colour ever use of branding from an org was when Hellraisers did that one where they showed someone had signed their contract and they made the graphic Maui that they'd like signed a deal with the devil. It's like, Well, the joke is, that's all I think of when I see that case Serato one. It's like, oh, well, you know what? At this point in time, I can't really like complain if the second you get out of prison, you just turn around like, let me back in, please, put me on death row. Like, at that point, you know, I have to just say, we're just going to round. We're just going to have to roll with this one, mate. We did what we could. We did what we could on that one.
It is crazy. He's had the Angels come down and try and get him out a couple of times as well. Is the real shame. It's just like, all right, well, here we go.
Put it this way, I'll tell everyone the spoiler. I obviously would have kept pushing for that, a bit like the Tabson one, for years and years. But all I'll say is this. He's obviously been quite forthcoming. When Zeus just sort of told me, like, look, it's impossible to get him out, I was like, Champ's not going to waste any more energy on that one. You know what? If you can't go to Liquid, where, by the way, Liquid, if you don't know, I'll just say this as well. In the Brazilian scene's perspective of Liquid is like, it's like if Hollywood comes to the Midwest to do a movie. You just charge them 3 times more because fuck them, they're Hollywood. So if you can't get with Liquid money, Kate Serato out, he's never going, boys. He's never leaving that region. So at this point, you got to do what I've done. Go the other way. We need to build a team around Serato in the Brazilian. That's our only chance. We can get people into Furia, but not out. I was trying to think of some analogy there. Is it like The Rock or something? You know that classic movie. I don't know what analogy we're going with here. You know, something like that. It's going to be something like that, isn't it? The mission to get inside to save Serato.
Oh fuck.
And also, speaking of which, you would need to have nuclear-sized bombs to try balls to try. I fucked that one up. By the way, I never do that on this. I'm actually really good. You need to have nuclear-sized balls to want to get into Furia. Whatever. Listen, I'm allowed to fuck up one time. At least I did it on the fucking talk show, not the actual desk. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good. Let's go back.
I can move to my bad point.
Let's go back. What is your bad point? And also, why do you hate America? But first, say your bad point.
I mean, I kind of picked this. I like to pick one for the guests, you know, one that I feel like they'll be able to enlighten me on, because I mean, you know, they weren't on the A stream very much. I watched their ancient game versus Saw, where Saw made that ridiculous comeback against them. Like, the bad point is just simply no complexity. It's complexity. Oh yeah, it's the point that, and I knew you were casting that one, Moses, and so I kind of wanted a little bit from you. But I mean, my take right now is that I feel like they're reeling from. It sucks because I actually rated JT as a pretty good IGL before Elige, and then I thought, okay, he's still doing what he does with him, probably having to accommodate what Elige wanted to do, but their T sides look pretty good. But now, I mean, the reason that Saw was able to make a good comeback against them is because they couldn't really get anything going on their offense, and in general at PGL they couldn't get anything going on their T sides for this. And that's actually with some players that I would say, you know, not bad, like Halzerk himself. I don't know if where I'd rank him in the oppers.
Yeah, where are you putting him? Where are you putting Halsey?
He'd be like a top 25 opper in the world right now. Okay. So maybe that's a little lower than his peak. But I'm kind of surprised Grim hasn't actually been able to fill the star rifler shoes. And when I look back at the stats, it was surprising to find out JT was their highest rated player at this event. Like that's got to be the most worrying sign for this complexity right now for me. And yeah, the overall bad point is, I mean, their only map wins for this year are against Imperial Female. So I guess I'm just curious about what you've seen from them and why things are not going well.
Watching that game, it felt like on the T side, they don't have a rifler who like wants to be involved in like the aggressive opening moves to like take space. It feels like they don't have like a rifler who's just like taking the initiative and being like, I need to take over this part of the map. They were running a lot of faster stuff as teams to try and collapse on mid, and just got like banged out when they went fast. And then when they decided to slow it down and change things up, Story just picked them apart with the AWP. SHR eventually picked one up as the double opper, and they struggled to put utility in the right place to stop the oppers from just picking 1 or 2 players off into the bomb site. Couldn't hold on to post plants after they got the bomb planted in overtime, just retakes constantly. I don't know. There's like, I think the lack of a strong star rifler is a huge issue, because you're right. That's an area where Grim should be the one developing it into with his experience and with his skills. And it's not quite there yet. I know. And there's some truth to this. When I was with Liquid and Stewie and Elige were there, one of the big points that Stewie always kind of harped on me with Grim was like, he doesn't have an attitude. Like, he doesn't have like that kind of like ego or an attitude that he wants to get stuck into it. He is a solid mechanical rifler, but he's the kind of rifler that it feels like is going to let the game come to him. He's never the one who gets the ego and like steps forward to make something happen. And I think they're missing that quality on any player, on some player. Maybe it's too early for Sixy and Nyx. you can't really lean on that forever. But it's the situation that they're in if they're going to stick to trying to rebuild this team within North America, is that you need somebody to have that kind of an attitude and that kind of a desire to be involved. I'd say there's this weird quality with Complexity where they just lose stupid rounds for no reason. Like on Inferno, there was a round like Saw's executing into the B bomb site. It's a 5-on-4 in the favor of Complexity. Hulzerk and Grim are like doubled up towards like back of the bomb site at Emo. And Hulzerk just misses 2 shots in the open. And it's like one flashbang gets thrown and that's it. And Saw's turning the corner and it's like two missed op shots. And then Grim kind of peeks out and gets killed. And it's like, well, you had the advantages and you were set up for this. You had an op holding an angle that they kind of pretty much dry swung into. And it's like, you just both died. Like individually, you just like have too many rounds where it's just like flat, wet noodle.
Yeah.
That's not the sound a wet noodle makes, but it's just like fucking weird. It's like, I don't have an explanation why you guys just didn't get kills here.
Yeah, I will say the obvious problem here is, I made the analogy before, it's like you can't replace Nico. It's even worse though, because in their scenario, like, Elige was it. Like, he was so much of what carried this team. I mean, the whole reason why, when we had Nero on this last episode, obviously the problem whenever you have anyone for HL TV on is everyone just pulls out their laundry list of like, here's all the things I don't like about the HL top 20, so explain it to me now, justify this. And you just put him on the fucking stand and grill him, etc. But the problem is, I understand why when a player barely plays any playoff games, it's hard to put him high up on a ranking because essentially, I've always said this, the HLTV top 20 they don't even claim it. It isn't the top 20 players of the year. It's essentially, how do you sort the teams that made the biggest runs in the tournaments by which of their players are better than the others? It's essentially just sort of like rank between the top playoff teams, who's the best. So unfortunately, Elige ended up in that scenario where he just was barely ever in the playoffs. But you do now see, now that he is gone, holy fuck, was he doing a lot in this team, boys. I mean, he just was like fucking, he was Jesus in this team. It was unbelievable. He was just giving them life. He was bringing them back. He was fucking stealing a map for them here and there. It was unbelievable. I mean, the joke when we had him on the show is, he doesn't even like Vertigo, but he just knew they had to play it and they had to just unleash him for they have any chance to win a game. And the real problem, you've nailed it, Moses, is this has happened 2 times in this guy's career now for Grim, which is, bro, it's like the Tyra Banks meme. We're pulling for you. We want you to be the star. Like, if anything, if you think about who this guy was in Call before Elige joined, bro, this is where it's your turn to do the frozen when Rob sleeves scenario. Like, you're the one who has the skill set. You could potentially fill this role, but unfortunately, you haven't done it. I mean, I'm with you, by the way. He just doesn't have like a create. What's mad is, think of all the players we used to have back in the day from NAMOs. We couldn't stop them talking shit. There was people who were going to come 13th at CPL, but they were talking like they were better than like SK. This guy doesn't have the attitude. He looks like he should be in fucking Weezer and not even like the singer. He'd be like playing bass guitar or something. That's a pretty fucking fire. Sadly, all my references are from the 90s. You have to understand, everyone wasn't born when these references were made. I don't even know what modern day band.
Beautiful.
I know, it's not bad. He does look like he'd be in Weezer though. And then the other thing is as well, this is why I think unfortunately this one move has sort of killed Complexity. It's not even just that you lost Elige. You nailed it, Moses. As we all learned from Falcons for the last year, the one thing you can't go without in CS2 is the aggressive star rifler. Like, that role right now is gold. Like, you can even do without the AWPer. Like, you could probably live with Hulzerk if like Grim was better or they just had an actual and the last thing, and this is really sad because I'm with Maui, I actually do think JT is good. I don't even think he's that bad a fragger, but here's what kills me inside. Obviously, if you want to stay NA, you haven't got an import slot yet. NA was Elige as well. That's the problem. So I can't take out JT because, like, who am I putting as IGL then? You know what I mean? So it's also the reason I feel bad for them is I don't know how they get out of this. Like, they feel like they're also painted into a corner. There's no obvious. Normally we're all going, just do this move. Like, I don't even know what the move is at this point in time. I don't know genuinely.
Well, it's because, as you kind of alluded to, NA's always had like the fucking arrogant shit talker who just itching for a chance to back it up on land. Yes. Well, now we have all those arrogant shit talkers. They're just stuck in like tier 3 North American Counter-Strike. Right. And that's their world that they're happy to be arrogant assholes in, is just kind of chilling there at home and being the top dog in a little fucking playground. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know where Complexity goes. They really are trying to play the game on nightmare mode. And like that, I try and keep that context in whenever I'm casting a game of theirs, because I really try not to be overly critical, because you are just like hamstrung by the fact that you can't attract new talent and you don't really have a good place of where to go next within the region. And especially as the other North American teams, by the way, like teams like Wildcard, have gone international, but are also picking up promising NA talent as well, and then performing well with it. So it's not like even the other teams are like disappointing to where you can grab, a JBA. I mean, I wonder, maybe there's an area of, if Wildcard continues to struggle, is there any reason for like Stanislaw and JBA to come back to complexity? Is there any attraction to moving to an org like complexity at the moment?
Well, we'll see if they maybe in the upcoming season by the MRQ Valve ranking stuff, those kind of numbers. The top 5 teams from the Americas get to just go to the major, and Wildcard is now past complexity by a significant amount of points. Like they're 200 points ahead of them, which is or 150 points ahead of them, which is that's pretty substantial. And if I had to put money on it, I would easily say Wildcard is more likely to keep moving up, and complexity is more likely to get passed by like the Imperials or even M80, which felt unthinkable last year. You know, it's like M80 could have the occasional pop off, but now M80 they're playing themselves into qualifiers, and they I think the hot take for this show is M80 is actually going to pass complexity. Like they're better than complexity. I think they're better.
By the way, the other thing as well is we can't all just keep saying the same catchphrase we've all said for 2 years. Just get an aggressive EU riflets. Like you are aware that pipeline is like already being mined like 50 times before it gets to you now. Like there's a million. Spoiler, that's what Ash does like every fucking 6 months. Like that's what, if you haven't noticed, every EU team is international, guys. They're all getting all those people. Nowadays, the joke is no one even looks in FPL. Everyone knows that. You go look in FPLC and you look in like tier 3 online, and by the way, that is like a fucking, you have to have a really crazy eye to pick the player from that, really, because you have to get the guy who doesn't just look good, you have to get the guy who's somehow going to like be good on 2 levels above, which is like, if you could do that, by the way, like the joke is at that point, I'd just say, I'm sorry, why are you even on complexity? Shouldn't you be like the GM of G2 at this point in time? Like you got the touch, mate. So no, there you go. I think that's a pretty good one, right? My one actually does touch on what you've all tried to talk about, but the thing is, you all talked around it. So I have picked an MIBR topic for my bad point, and it's just this. Everyone will know I actually do like most of the players in this team. I think almost every player can be like individually justified. I do think though, when you look at the bigger picture, I've always said I'm still not quite satisfied with like the calling looks a little bit off sometimes. By the way, they're another team where they have a really, really shaky map pool. Like they have some maps they can be really good on, but they're not the team that you almost never see a series of 3 maps where on all 3 maps they can perform. And so essentially what I've put as my bad point is MIBR fragility. Because bro, I've said this online, this is one of the hardest teams in the game to bet on. When I talk about the other ones that are hard to bet on, like 3D Max and Pain, that's because those teams are like, you know, half a team or they shouldn't be winning that. This team, when I see them win the big games, they pop off, I'm like that conversation before, like, holy fuck, there's so much talent in Brazil, and like they can just sort of make it work, and this is fucking awesome, and let's get all these guys together, and then they'll have a game against almost anyone. Then they'll just have a series where they're just fucking nothing, and it's like that fragility makes it so hard to fully get on board, especially because, by the way, the reason why this team of all the teams should be the one you want to get there is they have the automatic best marketing. Made in Brazil is the best possible name you could ever have, and it's got all the history. Everyone wants that team to succeed. So like I say, I don't even dislike anyone on the team. I've always thought Drop was underrated. Seems like he's doing a decent enough job transition, but something's missing. There's some like little X factor, some secret sauce they haven't got in that team where I don't get it, because when I look on paper, I think it should be better than this.
They should be, and obviously, I think one of the most exciting pieces of the team is Insani, who's like first busting out and being exciting like a year and a half, 2 years ago, and it's like we still just have him in the situation where it's languishing. So, it ties in so well to the other point as where it's just like this team should be way better. I actually have no more words to talk about with Brazilian teams where it's like you should be doing better, and I don't know how it's always so inconsistent up and down.
So I mean, I was following them pretty closely at the end of last year because I was super hyped about the Lukowski move, but then it feels like there's been a bad use of the off season for them because, I think the analogy we've given in the past for like how you keep up your map pool is that you're that circus performer that's spinning plates on all of those different sticks, and if you have one that's going really fast, you might focus on it a little less, and then you're going to pick up the ones that are slowing down quite a bit. And unfortunately for MIBR, at the end of last year, I really thought that their Nuke, their Ancient, their Inferno, all of those were really, really good. Primarily, I'd say they leaned on Nuke the most. But then this year, they actually haven't beaten any of top teams on Nuke. They're actually 0-5 against Astralis, Wildcard, Imperial, 3D Max, FlyQuest. And it used to be these really poppy plays, where they would just they basically didn't even really default like other teams. They almost just did like single flash, Lucauzi and Sonny double entry pack, and it was just like, boom, you're gonna lose. You're gonna die because that's just like a super high firepower entry pack. And it's kind of become sort of one-dimensional, and I would say predictable to other teams that if you can stop those kinds of plays or just even giving them the space and then playing a later stage of the round, if you don't give them the kill, that might be just as good as not dying, really. Or, well, that is what not dying is, but you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like as good as getting a kill is just giving them the space and not dying. Like, so I think teams have now kind of figured that part out of their game, and instead this year, they've gotten a little bit better at a few, like their problem map last year was Mirage. Their problem map was absolutely Mirage, and now they're like beating Astralis on it. You know, they're actually kind of, or they're taking Astralis to overtime, but they beat Astralis on it at Kato, and so they're actually kind of like it's just they had too much that they had to work on in terms of their map pool, and I think that they just stopped caring about the maps they were quote unquote good at and then focused completely on the maps that they were bad at, and they just couldn't keep it up. And I think the main root of the issue is that's what happens when you have a rookie IGL. That's what happens when Drop is your in-game leader and you don't have a guy that's like been doing this forever that can always rely on his like if Kerrigan runs into a bad spot with FaZe, he might just pull a strat out of his ass. Like, you don't know what he's got cooking, and he's gonna just like come up with something that's like, oh, I know that this can work, this sort of formation can work. But Drop is just like, it's got like 3 starters per map, and if those don't work, then we're fucked. So yeah, I feel like they need a deeper playbook with a probably a more creative in-game leader.
And maybe that gets fixed over time. I think one other thing that would point to that kind of being an area where there can be improvement, not to be like hypercritical of Drop, because I think he's doing fine, but just improvement would be nice, would be the idea that like we watched Insani back at the Major have that half against Navi that just gave him like the best of 1 victory, like just marching up Banana and destroying JL and whoever was there for defense each and every round. And then you just had Safe have this life game against Device. And it's like, I don't need those life games. I don't need those crazy peaks frequently, but like, can you just spread that out? Like, give me just an extra 10% on every game for the next month. I'd rather have that than this one crazy peak and a drop off. And I think that feels always to me when I see those kinds of crazy peaks, like it's going to happen with players, but also like a lack of consistency in how they're supposed to approach and how they feel in different situations within the tactics that doesn't let them hit that same peak consistently enough.
Also, if you just watch, bearing in mind, if you only look at the Liquipedia, you're going to see they went 1-3 at like not a crazy field. Bro, every single series could have been 3 maps or was winnable. Like they're almost never actually getting blasted as well. I agree with you as well, Maui. I do think one of the problems they had was when people didn't know them, they just tried to just like fucking win every duel. Whereas it's like, that's not even what CS has to be. It doesn't have to be that outside of your stars when they get the opening kills, etc. You don't have to peak all the time. So
I'd say also,
that one.
By the way, that fucking MIBR loss to Imperial is really painful. That would have qualified them to the Blast Open Lisbon. And like that's a huge loss to a regional opponent as well. Like it's in Imperial, as I said, I haven't even like heard about them in like 3 months. So yeah, it's that's got to be a rough start to the year for MIBR for sure.
Okay. Moses, what is your ugly point?
Ugly point. My ugly point is I feel like I've been spending the last couple of weeks just watching the tier 2 scene like chew itself up, like just tear itself apart in about every way imaginable. And it's hideous. It's ugly to look at from the outside as I'm not involved in that on any crazy level. But I mean, obviously you have TOs violating VRS rules, doing like shadow banning apparently, and other things that have gotten them deranked, which fucks everyone involved. It devalues your own event. Teams and players have now committed to your event, spent time preparing and going to your event, and now it doesn't mean anything for them. Players have been accusing each other and teams have been accusing each other on social media of cheating in these games, in these qualifying games, radar hacks. And by the way, I'm not saying it's not happening. I have no idea. I'm not saying it's not plausible, but like just watching this scene, like literally even like the community of viewers that watches tier 2 Counter-Strike accusing teams and players of match fixing when they play a bad game. This is a disaster going on right now in the tier 2 scene. And it's one of those like kind of sneaky disasters that doesn't really hit until later on, because I think the unspoken secret of esports, if you look around and look at where areas are struggling, you need a good pipeline into the professional scene. You cannot just have a top level scene and have it exist. If you do not have the pipeline of players constantly feeding into tier 2 from tier 3 or getting started in competition and building up into the rankings, like your esport is just eventually going to die when you don't have people to replace it. So if we're going to, I understand that there's a lot of shit going on in that tier 2 scene, but we need to start talking about solutions to some of these problems. There's no value in just posting clips and just saying this guy was cheating.
Yes.
All that is making everyone feel better or not accomplishing anything. And if we don't get to a point where we're talking about solutions to these problems, then this tier 2 scene is just going to continue to descend into a point where it loses all integrity. And then it's going to be very difficult. And then you're looking at a world where, yeah, the only roster changes come through things like FPL, Face It's Challenger, whatever it might be, wherever else you want to look for it. And players aren't learning Team Counter-Strike grinding up through the ranks. So those tier 2 scene, we need to find a way to sort it out.
Man,
and I don't even know where to begin with it either. I'm not trying to say I have the solutions, right?
I mean, I've been seeing this stuff about Oxygen and 500. Yep. I watched all the clips for that, and they look pretty damning. But then actually, I saw someone with a rebuttal post about this is how he could have known these people were all in these positions. And actually, I actually felt like it was pretty reasonable. I actually felt like he actually got some of those entry frags.
It's like the 12 angry men for Bulgarian accused cheaters.
It actually was.
Maybe though he didn't do it because of that reason though. Be reasonable, didn't he? Maybe he could have heard him in a footstep. True.
I don't think he could explain.
I love it.
8 out of 8 clips, but he explained 5 of them really reasonably. The guy jumped. Oh, he threw a nade from that position. Oh, actually, when Bait ran this setup last week, if he just looked at the demo, he would have seen that they'd be in these positions because he saw an op in one spot or whatever. And I was like, okay, this is actually all too good. Yeah, no, it actually was 12 angry.
We actually do need someone ironically like that who just defends any accused cheater. He just comes in like the shit hot defense lawyer. Let's be reasonable. Maybe he could have known. Try.
Yeah, no, literally, it was legitimately watching some after seeing it because it was Monacy, Glaze, Snappy, all were this is bullshit. Basically, I mean, they didn't all. That's not their words, but they all were basically accusing him. And then some 9 Twitter follower Andy made a video for the first time in his Twitter history just to defend this guy, and I'm like, wow, it actually checked out. So I don't know, but either way, for the rest of the tier 2 stuff as a whole, as I choose to still not take a stance on Oxygen's potential cheating, I would say that it's really it just feels so different because the implications are so much greater now. I think that this has kind of always been happening, that it's just that because every event needs to be, verified to be a VRS event. Yeah. The stuff in CCT before was kind of a known secret for people, where it was that they were doing their own sort of ban list behind the scenes. And it was it doesn't really have greater implications in all honesty, because
as far as I know, by the way, it was usually even tied with having a betting sponsor, and the betting sponsor doesn't want you to have those people. I think it was even usually something business related, as far as I know.
So there were definitely people that were banned for very flimsy reasons, but there were also a lot of people that were banned for very highly suspected radar hacking or cheating and stuff like that, or irregular betting patterns around their gameplay. So some of it was good, some of it was bad, but now that it has implications in the greater Valve ranking system, it obviously factors into the entire scene. And given how sparse the opportunities are for teams in tier 2 to get a chance to punch up, to get into the top 30 so they can get invites, it's so important that it's run properly, and it just doesn't seem like it's there yet. These are kinks that I imagine are going to be figured out in the first 6 months, 12 months of VRS. If we're still having this conversation in 6 more months from now, I'm going to say Valve needs to step in. They won't, and then I'm just going to the tier 2 guys are going to continue to fall in a pit of despair. So it's good that these issues are being raised, though, because it looks pretty dire out there.
No, by the way, go on. Yeah, go on.
I mean, Anders even has to cast this stuff now, so we obviously have to think about
poor bastard. Okay. And I think too, I know it also the VRS stuff for the tier 2 events really best with Jason Lake and Flom's starting of of their tournament league. It's really kind of changed the way they're trying to approach things. So I think just on every level, it feels like it's thrown a little bit of chaos into the mix, which is basically a tier 2 scene trying at the moment to organize how they can function, but obviously not doing a very good job of giving each other some fucking space to do it. because everyone is just at each other's throats. As you mentioned, as opportunities kind of dry up in that scene, it like just gets more and more aggressive to fight for like the piece of the pie that you need. So yeah, it's just a bummer watching it from the outside. And again, to reiterate, not saying that there's no suspicious play or cheating or like all that shit's possible. Match fixing is very possible down there as well. I have no idea, but let's find a solution and find ways to take care of it and fix it rather than just every couple of events just being like having a social media blow up of bullshit.
So, okay, I'm going to do a mixture of roasts / points here. It's the way I'm like letting people in on like what I'm just do anyway. So there you go, as usual. So I'll start off by just saying, what are you talking about, Maui? If there's anyone that's suited to cast this sort of play, it would be Anders in Human Reactions. Are you kidding me? And then casting people shitting on Snappy and Glaive. Like, bro, I feel like he's worked his whole career just for this moment. Like, he's suited for that. What the fuck does he know about Eternal Fire? You know what I mean? So anyway, then there's the whole angle that, like, bro, the part I just couldn't even believe. It was like I was doing the fucking Marty McFly meme. Like, hey, I've seen this one before. Is, wait a minute, you're telling me there's a shit hot online team, they're Bulgarians, and people think they cheat or match fix. Like, what year is it again? Is it 2015 or 20? Fucking hell, bro. We've already done this. We did this like 10 years ago. The GG play and all those Spy Leader and Bobble and Punisher. By the way, I don't even remember which one of them's worth the cheaters or not. Like, I just know that all of them got tarred with that brush. I don't know what it is about Bulgarians, bros. You're not beating the allegations. I'm just going to tell you that. And then I'll just throw this out there, right? An obvious thing where I have to just chastise other people in the scene is, listen, I grew up in a scene where there were even Bulgarian players that were playing the top level. No one ever suspected them of cheating. Everyone suspected Germans of cheating. Really, Germany? That's how far you've fallen. That's how much of your heritage you've let go. You're all just playing the game legit now. You used to be the greatest cheaters. You used to know the rule book back and forwards. You had all the trigger bots, the aim bots. You were cheating on land, for fuck's sake. All I'm going to say is, where's that German spirit? You know what I mean? Look inside yourselves and remember who you used to be. You used to be a great nation of cheaters.
This game has just gone to shit. There's so many pussies.
What happened to the game I love? What happened to the game I love? But anyway, here's the other reason, though, why I also got a crazy flashback again from 10 years ago. Because, bro, normally when people cheat or match fix, it's the other people in tier 3 that are going, hey, this guy's dodgy. And we're all like, look, I'm sorry, I don't give a fuck about you or him or the match. So, listen, tell someone who cares. But the problem is, you're right. When it's like Glaive and Snappy and Mordacy coming out, like, and by the way, Glaive and Snappy, at least, because they're veteran pros, did that thing where it's like, I'm not saying he cheats, I'm just saying, what the hell is this? Like, whoa, that's crazy, man. Like, we all know what you mean. You may as well just be saying he's hacking his tits off. We all know exactly what you mean. It's so obvious, I know, come on.
Also, the great irony of Glaive, who was accused of doing those like NVIDIA like smoke glitch cheating. Like,
which, by the way, I've even though apparently it was true, they had the trick of like you could see on the radar. It wasn't actually a glitch. They could see on the. Even though that's true, I've always thought low key that was the funniest cheat accusation because it was when Nico had just lost like 1 million times to Astralis. He was like, "You're all just cheating against me, weren't you?" I just love that even Nico, like the greatest rifler ever, does what we all do in a random matchmaking game. Like, he's just cheating. He's no weak in the pro. He could never know. I was behind the smoke. How did he shoot me? He shoot me now. Like, I love the idea we even put Nico on full bar tilt because that was something I was even going to say is, mate, here's why, actually, if you're pros, I know this sounds fucked up, but you really shouldn't do that publicly when you don't have evidence. And the reason I'm going to say that is this, because, bro, how many times did they all come out years later and apologize to JW, Robs? Go down the list. Well, here's the problem. Apologizing years later doesn't help if you get them kicked out of the tournament now, mate. Like, I'm sorry, that is really why you have to have, like, some sort of conclusive proof, or we have to have something more than just, like I say, 12 angry men of, like, how good is the prosecution lawyer at making the case this guy is cheating? And unfortunately, to a random fan, guys, they're not even watching that or considering that. They're just going, holy shit, if MonteCristo says it, like, bro, MonteCristo, your opinion has 100 times the impact of even, like, Snappy, etc. in that scenario. Like, that's the wildest one to me. That actually did make me think of, like, old school Flusher shit. Because I've always said it's not even the Flusher clips. It's the idea people like Nip and fucking Shocks were like, yeah, he's cheating. It's like, what? Bro, like, if you say that, essentially, this is what you guys don't get. If you say that, we almost have to resolve this, whether he's cheating or not. Otherwise, the guy's career forever is just in weird limbo. And the joke is, a Flusher, he had to win, like, every fucking tournament in the world before you all went, all right, yeah, maybe I was wilding on that one. It's like that.
But even that didn't convince everybody.
Listen, I'll get him one day. I don't know how, Moses. I might have to invent a time machine. I might pop out of there. Who knows? One of these days. Listen, one of these days.
He's still fucking suspect to this day.
Exactly. Listen, you have to understand, Moses, I actually am enough of a G, and I've sort of figured out how to navigate my own personality, that I absolutely did do that reflections with Flasher and sort of say, like, did you cheat on it? And he has to be like, oh no. And then it's like, well, listen, we can agree to disagree. So anyway. So no, there's one last thing though, because you all said there's no solution. I actually know what the solution is, and I want you to all join me, because spoiler, this solution actually exists for every problem with VRS. Here's the problem. We're all used to the top-down approach, right? If you do things that fix the top land with the top teams, no, all the fixes in VRS need to be at the back end of the funnel, the widest part. I'm not joking. Think about how you get proven you're not a cheater. You go to a real LAN and you play real teams and you play well. And thus far, none of us assume people cheat on LAN, right? Well, here's the problem. If you're Valve, the rest of the scene's working. They've got all the massive prize money. Here's where actually some money would go a million miles with it, which is one, open up VRS so we can have tier 2 lands, and two, put some money in tier 2 lands. Bro, if you do that, send 500 to a land tomorrow, mate. If they go to 3 lands and they can do this shit, well, it's going to be way harder for all these people to say the guy's cheating. But the problem is, if we're just playing weird online cops and they're in like round 8 of a bracket where you don't look at their team and recognize the name, that's exactly the person that's going to get accused every time, unfortunately, whether he's legit or not. And actually, I agree with you, Moses. We can't say either way. We're not saying no one cheats, but we also can't say these people cheat. And it's also spoiler. Again, I just don't really give that much of a fuck. Like, if there was someone the difference with the Flusher one is the idea he was actually like in the best team in the world. That was what was wild on that one, So no, I actually think,
and one of the
for Valve, all I want is just like more grassroots shit. I think that solves so many of the issues. It's even basically secretly the real problem with the VRC. And lastly, I'll give you one last reason as to why I agree. If you're someone professional, you should be very careful of accusations. Because, bro, I thought people were just actually hating on like women angle, where people kept saying like on forums about the Imperial Valkyries team, like, no, well, if they do lose the map, it's probably match fixing. Like, well, then they can't win either way, then can they? For fuck's sake! Like, if you're actually going to assume real top 20 and 30 teams would match fix a map on LAN against them, then we're cooked. Like, we can't get out of that, because in that scenario they can never prove themselves to be good enough, because your logic would just be, oh, I guess the other team just threw the game on purpose for money or skins. By the way, why is every topic just 2015? Bro, it's time of flat circles. So we're doing I buy power again. Flusher cheats. There's Bulgarians won't stop fucking hacking on the internet. Valve need to fix the game. What else is that? I agree with you, actually. The one last thing that's really crazy, Moses, is you have to be a real boomer to know this. But even though it is true, it is actually accelerated and worse. That is literally what everyone said about CSGO. They were like, you can't hold angles anymore. It's just people peeking and shooting you in the head.
Holding W.
Yeah, that was literally the number one thing we all said. And the joke is that's just come around again. That's like the new thing that people have discovered. Like, hey, peeking's a bit OP. It's like, yeah, no shit. It is. You're right.
Yeah, we've been moving that way for a fucking while now.
Okay. Right, what is your ugly point, Mauisnake?
Mine is that I feel like this team has lost a lot of their identity and what made me a fan of them. I still can say that the core trio...
I love your style, Maui, because what you do is you don't just go... My point's going to be about Falcons. Now, the thing about that... What he does is...
Intentional.
Yeah, like, that's even better, because what I like is... I've got the point, but even I'm trying to like play like the viewer and play the game.
Yeah, I'm ready to guess who the good team is.
Go on, keep going. This team... What started out with it?
He likes
the first clue. What's clue one?
I know what I'm doing. I'm drawing the attention of the listener in.
What's clue one again? Give me clue one again. To me, Brad.
Yeah, it was that it's the style of this team has really they've lost their identity.
Mash spots.
I used to root for them.
Complexity. No, my bad. Keep going.
Yeah, I think that their core trio is actually quite strong.
It's phase, because I know phase whenever I hear it.
No. It's an ugly point. So
I even know the point, guys. I'm just fucking with you.
Yeah, I know. It's I think JDC, I think Crimbo, and I think Taps is a totally solid trio.
The only downside there is Big's just not that sexy. Like you sort of baited us in with some clickbait there. I thought it was gonna be really sick. It's all good.
Well, I think that it's a narrative reason, okay? Right. So anybody can jump on this one. Is that when they decided to remove Gabi as the coach of the team, I really feel like they just lost a lot of their soul. I mean this purely based off of the play style. Like you could say, I mean, even the last roster they had was Searson and Regon, or versus this 5-man lineup with QB and Hyped. It doesn't really matter. It's just the way that they play is more of a product of what I would just say is the Counter-Strike refinement culture of just everybody's trying to play like proper European CS, you know, like defaulty into like just taking map control into splitting a bomb site. But the flair of Big before, if for people like we have to change the narrative about them, unfortunately, because it's not about nerdy lineups anymore. It's not about like having a cool nade stack. It's not about having like a smoke that I've never seen before. When I watch a Big game today, I'm not inspired in the same way as I was tactically back then. And I can still root for their team and players because, you know, I still think some of them are pretty good, but I just don't think that whatever like Kakafu's bringing as a coach along with Tabson has pushed it just kind of pushed Big into this area where, yes, they qualified for the last major, which is great, and they actually did pretty well in the opening stage of it on top of that. But I just think that it's a little bit more just player propelled and just kind of playing fundamentals and just playing really standard CS. And I guess just I'm a fan of, unlike Launders, who's like, you know, trying to say like, let's make it all nationality focused. I just like when people have clear defined styles, you know?
So
like,
you're
like,
not a racist.
No, I'm going to go on record and say
it's the way he keeps doubling down on that, and especially because he can get away with it. That's the worst thing, Moses. He's actually done what I never could. He's getting away with it as well. I know.
He's getting what I never could.
I actually respect the fuck out of him for it. Good for you. Hunters, keep going.
Yeah, it just keeps going on it. I mean, overall, I just like to wrap it up on the point is just like, yeah, like big don't do nade stacks anymore. They don't do cool smokes that like really mess up opposing teams. And I just think that if you're a team that's hamstrung yourselves because you're trying to only foster German talent and you're trying to be this German team, like go all in on the fact that you're also going to play a German style that's a little bit more back in the day with Gabi, more creative, a little bit more geeky. You're gonna find the new smoke. You're gonna find this triple nade stack that's gonna like take out a player before he even gets to see anybody in the round. And instead, they're just playing like they're trying to play Navi CS, but they have no player that would even qualify to be on Navi, unfortunately. And I rate Crimbo, I rate JDC right now, but I just think like this is not the way that you get upset victories. And you're just going to kind of plateau like that. Or maybe you'll steadily improve. But like, it's just, if you don't have top player personnel, why are you trying to play top player CS? It's like what Thomas said at the Blast Paris Major when he made the Into the Breach run.
Yeah. I think I can't remember his exact words, but it was along the lines of, I can't do the shit they can. I don't have the players. So I got to do some crazy stuff. We got to unleash the guys. Yeah, I don't know. Big Duncan nailed it from my perspective. As Big is just not sexy in any way. I don't really know what. I actually haven't seen this new lineup play quite yet. I haven't casted or analyzed at any of their games. But they just strike me as like. Just strikes me as like they're like the ostrich sticking their head in the sand. Like how is every organization in the world and every team in the world going international saying we cannot get talent and we can't solve problems from within when we only have a player base to pick from of our country alone. Yeah, you're trying to win in an era and trying to build a team in an era within your country where that's basically impossible. Anyone who's going to be worth their salt coming out of Germany is going to go international immediately. You're not even going to be able to attract the best German prospects. And if you do, it's going to be for like a couple of years at the start of their career. And then when they pop off, it's going to be deuces. I'm going out for greener pastures. So I think Big is basically selecting to put themselves in a category where they're never going to be championship contenders. And they're going to keep kind of recycle German players and see if they can ever change that fortune. And it's not happening over the past, 5 years or so now. So here we are.
I appreciate that the theme has become, because me and Moses are back together, we are just in 2015 again. People are actually throwing me alley-oops. Like, the thing with the Germans, Thorin, is they don't really have any soul, do they? Like, bro, I've been trying to not go into the minefield every fucking talk show. I'm trying to make an analytical points over here. And you're like D-Wade looking away as I just come up like LeBron, like, well, time to 360 windmill this motherfucker. Like, it's okay. All right, fair enough. I do agree, though. You are right, because essentially what they've lost is the theme. Here's the most obvious point to make. Right? In fact, they all do. Every single one of those German players, as far as, I don't know Hyped, to be fair. As far as I know, they all speak English. So the stupidest thing is, the main reason to keep German is the notion that you've got these shit hot tactics, and it's only when you communicate in your native language without any delay that you can get the tactics off. The problem is, one, that just isn't CS2 at the moment. It just isn't. And then two, you're not getting them off anyway. Like, that's the biggest problem. And then the reason why I'm so bummed out about this squad is because I don't care what any fan thinks. If you look up his rating, Crimbo's not going to have crazy numbers. Here's what you go and do. Go on to Big, look on LAN, go to this year, and just look on CT side. He's fucking insane at fragging. That guy's actually a really skilled player. So there's something wrong with their system, bro. If they're supposed to be the super tactical team, the number one thing you want to do as a tactician, mate, is put your best player in positions on T-side where he gets kills. Like, you want to find where he's comfy, where he can pop up. This guy definitely, I've seen the eye test checks out. He has fucking skills, mate. So they're even somewhat like suppressing him right now. Also, that whole thing for years that was kind of the like quaint or like fucking cool story of Big was tabs and frags and IGLs. It's like, bro, both are looking ropey now. Like, look, I understand he's played a long, long time. He's played like fucking all of CSGO basically. Like, the problem is the idea he was going to keep doing that. I mean, that just seems like it's going to be diminishing returns. It logically should be. So I'm with you. I actually think the saddest part is the obvious answer to me is just get in a couple of players who are from abroad. By the way, you can even do it like if you still want to be with German, then just have 2 international players. You know what I mean? Pick the 2 international spots, keep the 3 that can stay. By the way, Crimbo and JDC are fine. Like, those players can stay in the team. Maybe Tapsing can stay. Well, then maybe we need a different AWP, or maybe we need a different supportive element. I don't know what it is, but I feel like it's just an obvious one because you are right. Like, to me, the only reason to keep the national squad is if there is that secret sauce, if there's something extra you get out of your culture, your language. At the moment, it isn't that from Big. And I'll tell you the worst thing about it. I'll probably do a hot take on this soon on a show. The saddest thing is this. It's actually the same thing Richard famously told me back in the day about why he gave up on Gob B as a fragger. Because he said in CSGO, he actually went to the NRG house when they were in Vegas, and he would just watch the guy play the scrims, then play 3 hours of deathmatch, and he never ever like got better at shooting people. It's like, bro, like, what can I even say to him at that point? Like, normally you just go, get in the server. It's the same thing. I know that this team is one of the hardest grinding teams ever. It's actually what people even complain about when they leave the team. Like, they sort of burned me out. Like, you never get a break. So in that scenario, that it isn't, there's nothing you can fix inside that room, guys. There's got to be something external has to change.
And I mean, it's kind of getting to a bad point. Hype was on this roster before, wasn't he? He did
he already did
4
this.
or 5 months. Yeah, and so like you're even gone back to a point where you're like looking within Germany. It's like, we got to go back to this guy. Now, maybe they have the logic of he was in Big Academy. We promoted him for a few months when we needed him. He wasn't ready. Put him back in Big Academy. But you kind of know what you're going to get. I don't think Hyped is going to be any kind of crazy solution unless there's some mental development.
Oh, I've got a joke. I've got a quick joke for you. There is a solution that's quite obvious here. Just get one of those cheaters, then win a few games, whatever. To fix the problem.
Nobody's trying it. Yeah.
Two words, one stone.
Go back to your roots.
Exactly.
Go back to the German Counter-Strike roots.
Just actually start cheating.
I'll say this in defense of Big, though, in the sense of them losing their style from that like tactical, like cool, detailed execute and utility usages. That being the thing that you lean on to like win you games would not work in today's Counter-Strike. I think they'd get obliterated doing it. Yeah. I think being able to prep for your opponents is so much better now than it was years and years ago and years past. So I think teams would be able to be way more prepared. Obviously, that kind of a style is more utility dependent in a game where you're force buying and half buying and buying utility every single round. You're not always going to be able to go into gun rounds being able to lean on that tactic because you won't have all the nades you need. And then just the disruptive nature now of teams, if they know they're playing against an execute style squad, holding onto utility, the smoke breaks. I think there's too many things in CS2 that can unravel that kind of a style of play that I don't blame them for going away from it. They've lost their identity, but I think they kind of had to in order to build a new identity because I think that old one would get demolished just as much in this game as it kind of it was in CSGO.
Yes. Also, I'll say this as well. This is a random angle I guess they haven't even thought about, actually. All they've done inside Big is just cycle coaches from the German scene. They've had Godby, Toby, they had Legia, who was obviously in their squad before, they had NKJ. Bro, there's another angle you can try, just like in sports. Change the coach, like maybe bring in a coach that has like we're saying, like an up-tempo, looser style of like aggressive play or something, and don't do, because at the moment they're just trying to recreate that German style, which, listen, it was historically a classic style, but that it wasn't even like in CSGO, by the way, that was like getting championships. That was more like a 1.6 thing. That was back when other people didn't do tactics. You were geniuses for doing them. So, and sadly, in the modern day, if everyone in the world, all the best players are telling you it's just bloody people wide swinging and Pete, then why don't we start doing that? You know what I mean? Like, it sounds like it works. Yeah. I'll always say that you can complain so much OP, but use it while it's OP. Fucking abuse that shit. Not the cheats, just the thing about the wide swinging. Anyway, right, the last point of the show is going to be one where I actually get the sense from what Moses said earlier. I might not be alone on this one because I was worried, which is being as VP didn't make it. They didn't even make it to the playoffs. I was really scared, because I think people are doing this already, that everyone's going to actually hop on the hate train and be like, oh, this team sucks. What's the point? And it's going to become like what happened with the last VP lineups for the last year and a half, what happened with Cloud9. And the thing I hate about that is I think people should definitely not be too hasty and dismiss this Virtus Pro as like it's more of the same. It isn't at all. Like, first of all, I actually even thought the Cloud9 roster wasn't terrible. The problem is they had the same problem VP did. It's been too long, and when fans get really fatigued by not having results, they don't have any patience left, bro. Even if you bring someone in, it's like I already saw this, bro, at this tournament with Maus. Like, people were like, well, so much for that Spinks move. It's like, he hasn't even finished one LAN, and then they ended up fucking around and making the playoffs. Like, Jesus, can he have one LAN? Like, look, I get it that you didn't like the Katowice where he wasn't there, but he wasn't there. So on the VP one, first of all, I thought they actually looked quite canny in Katowice. They were legit. We'll never know what they'd done the playoffs because Flammers had to go home. Secondly, he just had a bad LAN at this one, by the way. And there's the reason I also want to say don't dismiss them. Because the problem VP lineups had is every name was proven before, and then they did shit in the game and they didn't do anything. First of all, the Flammers guy is 20 years old and he's played something like 6 lands that weren't Russian lands, for fuck's sake. So like, he hasn't been bedded in at all. By the way, most of those were like, one was in Namiga and a few were in Gamer Legion. Like, it's not like he's going to the semis. Like, he's mega new. And by the way, he does so much work on their T side. Like, he has some of their clearly building into their system. And then you just look at some of the other names. Bro, Icy does frag with the AWP. Flit actually Icy's fucking awesome, farms on CT side. Like, I'm not going to say they're going to be awesome, but this is like a team low key. Bear in mind, I agree with you. I thought there were so many good roster moves. This is like sort of sleeper set of moves. I kind of vibe with VP, and even if they didn't make it to playoffs here, like, I'm not giving up on them. I think there's something there.
I'm with you. I mean, granted, they have like the opposite situation of G2, where G2 went from being really good to no matter what change you made was always going to be relatively underwhelming when you lead Nico. VP was at the bottom. No matter like what change they made, it was going to get better. But I still think I'm surprised at how much better they looked at Katowice. Everyone's smiling, everyone cheering. I think Fame was given interviews. Flit was given interviews, which is crazy from the VP side of things. Electronic now is like the sole hands on the wheel in-game leader. You no longer have that confusion at the top. So I think this team is poised for a turnaround, and I think their first 2 events, even though there's some disappointment, surely show that they're on the right path. So I'm with you. I'm not saying this team is going to be world beaters challenging for a trophy, but I think it's clear that they've kind of turned the ship in the right direction, and now we get to see what goes on. Because low-key as well, you got to think of VP this way. Maybe one of the most interesting stories about them is Electronic, for how good he's been in his career and the reputation he has as an incredible player. This might be his last chance at performing on a tier 1 team. After this, it's like, bro, you've now been in multiple rosters that have just bombed straight when you join the team, like coincides with that timing. Like, you have to go down to tier 2 and show us that you actually know what to do and you can be part of a team before we're going to take risks on you again. So like, this is a big test, I think, for Electronic as a leader to be like, I have to stay at the top echelon of Counter-Strike.
I guess I don't know. I don't know if I'm as thrilled with you as you guys are on VP. I mean, I think that they can battle their way through some of these games. I feel like it's cool to see this core in not the James system. But I'm not getting too excited about like how good they're going to be because I almost feel like my perspective of them would be just like, it's a honeymoon in my viewer's eye because I'm getting to watch Fame and Flit not save as often as they used to. So it
no, but here's the thing, Maui. Let me put this to you. Let me push back a little bit.
Yeah.
Look, on a lower level, obviously, I actually do view Flit as one of those like K Serrata type people where it's like you could be way better if you're in the right team. Like, I actually did think they sort of suppressed him. You were a fan of this guy, right? I think the guy has real talent, mate.
Yeah.
I've been liking Flit a little bit. What's weird is that actually I've been kind of seeing the upwards trajectory of VP, and sometimes it's like it seems like it's a win by committee as opposed to Flit being the best rifler bar none. Nowadays I'm kind of like, I guess like I've seen Flamus have a good map that helps them. I've seen at Katowice, for example, I've seen Fame have a good pop off. Like sometimes Icy just delivers really hard, and I guess it's spread pretty evenly, but Flit's not hard carrying as much as he was in CS:GO for me. That's kind of where I'm a little bit worried too. Where it's like it really did feel like Flit probably should have been on a top 20 list at some point, but it's just that he was playing on like Forza and an outsiders/VP team that was very inconsistent with deep runs. Obviously they made some, but just not enough. So I guess I just have a little bit more hesitation with saying like this is my team to watch on the come up right now. So. Yeah, that's it. It's not like I'm not saying I'm out on them or anything like that, but I'm just like it wouldn't surprise me if they just sort of plateau
By the way,
at like 8th in the world.
Being as like that was like a fairly simple topic, I'll give you a little extra angle, which is I saw. Here's the thing. I will disclaimer. Whenever I say anything that I saw on a graph, not even text, just on a graphic from CIS news _EN or whatever. I don't even know if they actually translate it right. I'm just the moron going, you've seen this in the National Enquirer? Like, I don't know if that's true. Could be nonsense. Maybe they never said it. Who the fuck knows? But there was one that was the other day about Hobbit that made me laugh so hard. Because it said that in Cloud9, when they were all trying to like get the fuck out, supposedly Hobbit had the offer from VP, but then Electronic just like got in there before him. It's all like, you know, when Hobbit's on the phone, like, yeah, maybe like next month, you know, it's like he didn't hear that like click as like Electronic picked up the other line. That's why I'm also using jokes I've realized from fucking like actual landlines. All the kids are like, how would that work with them all? But I just realized I've actually done myself on that one. Listen, watch the 70s movie. There's people tapping phones and everything, motherfucker. So anyway, the idea that Electronic heard that, then the second Hobbit hangs up to like think it over, you know, I'm going to sleep on it. Electronic just calls them up. Yeah, no, I could come tomorrow. Yeah, I could be there at 9 in the morning actually. Bro, why are you actually like fucking ripping this guy off and taking his spots? Like, let Hobbit have them. Because if you don't know Hobbit now, it's just like, oh, well, back to Kazakhstan. I go like, what? Like, can he play the game?
Did you see that interview where he was like, I know exactly why Shiro wanted to leave that Cloud9 team, but I'll let him tell the story.
I love that as well.
Like, I know. Where are you, bro?
You know, the worst thing about that is we all just hoped it was something like, oh, yeah, he's disagreeing with the vision. You know, he believed in spirit. No. Like, no, now they're trying to imply there's some like hella spicy drama. And obviously, because Hobbit's also the most chill guy ever, but I wouldn't want to spread rumors. You've just basically cock-teased me like a motherfucker right now.
Yeah. I hate that. I hate the whole Eastern European scene because like we get fed a lot of stuff about the Western scene, and we kind of
there's so much gossip in it, bro. It's crazy, isn't it?
We know more than like the average Redditor comment. You read the Reddit comments and we're like, oh, that's just not true, but it's not really my place to like correct this narrative right now. But then with the Eastern European stuff, we are just like the fans.
Of course. That's why I like it.
We're not fed nearly as much.
We just get, I have to understand, I don't view it intellectually, Moses. I'm not really sitting there, come on, how will this affect your history? No, I'm just stuffing popcorn in my mouth, watching like Love Island, going, no, she's a fucking whore, get away from him. Like,
because I inject that low quality drama into my veins.
And also, by the way, how are you going to say that, Hobbit? Like, look, but that's really for Shiro, the most silent player in the whole scene who gives nothing away with his emotions. That's for him to tell that story. You mean we're never going to find out then, you fuck? He doesn't even have a comment when he won the motherfucking major. We're never going to find that out. It's over. That's it. That secret dies with him at this point in time. Like, we're never going to know. By the way, the worst thing is as well, Moses, I was done with that Cloud9 super team that didn't work. I'd accepted. In my heart, I just understood. Now I need to know there's a secret drawer of drama that if you open it, makes it all this. I can't get out on that team. I can't ever leave it. I can't, bro.
That Cloud9 CS roster and whole era, once they picked up the Gambit guys, has got to be the most sad sequence of events. It's the first time Cloud9's like left the game, and I've been like, that's fair play. Yeah. This time around, they did everything right. They made all the right moves. They bought the right team. They bought the right players, and it all shit the bed. So fair play. Take a break. Take a step back.
By the way, the worst one. I hate when the kids do that. I said this on Twitter. I hate when the kids do that thing where, like, after one map, when you said a player's good, they're like, well, this aged well. Because as I said on Twitter, like, the concept of aging like milk, guys, is milk goes off, and once it goes off, you're fucked. If tomorrow the guy can then have 2 good maps and be good again, the milk's suddenly fresh again. That doesn't even work in the analogy. But I'll tell you what aged like absolute fucking ass milk was if you ever go to when they added Electronica Perfecto to Cloud9. I did it. We all did the tweet like, they're going to win the major, bro. And then they didn't even make like one final ever. Like, it was so fucking ass.
Collectively, everyone got so
it's like one of the only times I've ever seen the whole scene just like, yeah, fuck it, send it. I believe in you. You can do it. Like, brilliant.
This is the closest to a lock we're ever going to get.
I know. Jesus.
Oh, fuck.
Jesus.